Welcome to your Sprinkle with Hope podcast. The purpose of our podcast is to spread hope, light, and love. It is important for us to be engaged in this work so we can help motivate, uplift, and inspire you. Whether it is listening to us or hearing one of our amazing guests, our hope is that what you hear encourages you, strengthens you, and helps you discover additional tools to create a better life for yourself. Share this with family and friends, leave us a review or rating, and know that each small action you take to spread this message is appreciated. Subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel so you don't miss anything.
Welcome to the Sprinkled with Hope podcast.
This is Jason. And this is Shane.
And it's podcast time.
So, Lori, we have come to a point in our show where we call the double down dose. Jason and I have two questions. We love to ask these questions to everybody. We get such different insights. So the first question is this: how would you define love?
I think love can be pure, but imperfect. And it's the light that can fill you and give you purpose and meaning.
That's awesome. Beautifully said. So the second question to the double down dose is what is your definition of hope, or how would you define it?
Hope is what carries me through moment to moment to moment of my life. And I think after the death of my husband, that is it. That is what I have inside me that keeps me putting one step in front of the other. Because I feel like if you don't have hope, it's easy to give up. And I have hope that my life will be okay and my children's lives will be okay. And if I can cling to that, then one day I know that will be true.
How would you define hope?
It's a good question. Hope for me is knowing that the sun's going to rise again in the morning. Hope for me is knowing that no matter what unfolds day to day, life goes on. Hope for me is just knowing that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And hope for me is just trusting that we know what we're doing, even if we don't on this level know what we're doing, and that everything is always unfolding for our higher good.
I love it. So good. So the second part of the double down dose today is what is your definition of love, or how would you define love?
Wow. Okay, love to me is that spark of light that resides in our heart, that we can choose how to amplify it, who to give it to, and also how important it is to receive our own love from ourselves in the form of self-love and self-care.
Beautiful.
So good.
We love asking those questions because on the surface it might seem so simple, like what is hope and what is love? But you do like most of our guests, and you take a second to really think about what is love. I've never actually had to define that. And so we love asking those questions and getting insight. Helen, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so grateful that we were able to connect with you and get to know you more on a personal level. I'm wishing you all the best in all of the things that you're working on.
Thank you so much. And it's been my absolute pleasure to be able to connect with you guys too. It's been wonderful. So thank you so much.
We talk a lot about hope. And so what is your definition of hope, or how would you define hope?
You have to ask a hard question.
The second one might be harder.
It'll be harder.
Uh-oh. I don't know how to put it into words. I'm going to try. So last night I got up and I spoke and I shared some of the hardest things that I've been through, because it was at an addiction recovery kind of program. And one thing I love about the addiction recovery program is that when you recover, all the hardest things you've been through actually are your biggest blessing to everybody else. Because what you're saying is, I've been through all this and I have a beautiful life now. So if I did all that and I can recover, so can you. There's hope. And to me, that's hope. Like when I walked into an addiction recovery meeting and I felt so broken and hopeless, and I saw somebody in the front of the room with light in his eyes, and he had 2 years of recovery, I knew now if he did it, I could do it. Because I didn't have that connection right then with my Heavenly Father. But if somebody was standing in front of me that had the light of our Father in heaven, then I knew there was a path for me. So last night when I got done, an older gentleman came up. I was just standing to the side, and he just grabbed both of my hands, and he held my hands, and he just looked in my eyes. And I didn't say a word, and he didn't say a word. And it was for about 60 seconds, which you would think is kind of awkward. But what I knew was that his soul was saying thank you to me. You know, that it was like, you did it, I can do it, we can do it. And that to me is what hope is, that we are in this together. I mean, of course we have a loving Heavenly Father who loves his children no matter what, no matter where we are, and he is always cheering us on, and he is always available. But sometimes it's hard to reach that place. But on this earth, we have each other to help us get there. And so if I were to define hope, it would be to see other people's light and to know that all things are possible because someone else is already doing it.
So
If that
cool.
helps.
There are so many lessons that I'm getting from this discussion. I just love everything that you're saying. And it really is true that we're all in this together, and we can take our life choices that might have been wrong at the time, but we can turn those around and teach other people. So the second part of the double down dose is in most cases is a really tough question to answer for people, but it's so simple, and we love asking the question. The second question is, how would you define love?
Oh, you guys ask these. Like, to me, like hope and love are the most valuable things, you know. They're just so valuable because when you have hope, you can get through anything. And when you have that love, it's like, how do you define it? You know, in my younger years when I was struggling, I felt really disconnected from people. Like I remember going into a room and I'd be like, I wonder what they're thinking, how can I one up them, they're judging me, I got to judge them first, whatever, I just had all those thoughts. When I was in prison, I got to a place where I decided to take 100% responsibility for my life. And I actually only did that because I saw someone else get up and do it. Like they literally stood up and said, I'm here 100% because of the terrible choices I made and the people I hurt, and they laid it all out. And I was like, oh, that was powerful. I want to do that, right? Yeah. And after I did that exercise, it took me 6 months. I made a spreadsheet and it was like full on a lot, like all the things I'd ever done to hurt anyone, And then I picked a group of girls and I said, will you guys let me share this with you down at the rec yard? So I shared it, said a prayer, buried it in the rec yard, and said, now I'm going home without it. It's not mine anymore. I said it.
Yeah. Love that.
And after that experience, my soul opened up, like my love, my connection. Like a new girl could come into prison and I'd just be like, hi, and put my arms around her. I just felt so much love for people. It was like, I cleared out the wreckage of my, my pain and stuff. And I remember when I was in a treatment program, and it was kind of difficult because there were just hard things that we were talking about. And the girls would always come in and say, I'm sitting next to Miss Louder, I want to sit by her. And one girl would just lean into me and she goes, I just feel so happy when I'm by you, And I thought, that's good. And I looked at her and I said, but that's because I love you. And she goes, then I know you do, And I think maybe that's how I would define it. When somebody sits next to you, as far as a person, and knows that they're loved. Like it doesn't have to be a word. It's just who you are. You just love people. But that comes from our Father in heaven. It comes from knowing our worth It comes directly from him, and it's the energy of the whole universe. I mean, I would sit outside under a tree and just feel so loved. It's the energy of all creation, because his power is through love. And so, but I don't know how to define it other than just that I feel it all the time,
Yeah. Yep. Again, we love talking about hope. We have a podcast called Sprinkle with Hope. We have some courses on teaching about how to develop more hope. And so the first question of the double down dose is simply, how would you define hope?
I would define hope as believing in the greatest expectations of God. That's hope. Make them big. Make them big. Go big or go home. He's the Almighty God. Nothing is impossible for him. That's hope. And when I think about that, when I was a little girl, I thought I could fly. And I'm telling you, in every fiber of my being, I know I could fly. I would literally get on tables and jump, and people would have to catch me. But I know I did it when people weren't around. And I never fell. So I know I flew because I believed. I believed that God, I could fly. And so now when I get down and I say, no, you're super Stacy. That's what my Uncle Ferdinand called me. You're super Stacy. You can fly.
That's awesome.
So now I say to myself, you can fly. You're super Stacy. You are the beloved daughter of the Almighty God, and you can fly.
Exactly. I love it. So the second question for the double down dose today is simply, how would you define love?
Unconditional. Unconditional. Being able to forgive, accept, give compassion, empathy, and all the goodness that you have inside of you, give it away. And as far as feeling it, I'm still struggling with that. And I pray for that every day. I pray for God to help me feel love and feel loved, because I don't know what it feels like. I mean, I know that my children love me. Don't misunderstand. I know the love of my children.
Mm-hmm.
But the fatherly love that I want to feel from God, I never had it. So I ask God every single day, please, Father, help me feel your love. Help me feel your love so that I can love myself and love everyone else. Like I said, I'm not Jesus. I'm not perfect. I'm human.
Yep.
And that's the honest truth.
The first question is what is your definition of love, or how would you define love?
Love is put in your heart, but not to stay. Love is not love until you give it away.
Yes. That was great. Very good. Yeah. So we've also come up with an acronym like you with your data. Ours is around hope, because we love to talk about hope. So heart, overcome, passion, and enough. And how would you define overcome, or how would you explain that to somebody, to overcome?
Well, the first thing that has to be in place to be an overcomer is to have priorities in place. And the priorities are, simply put, intelligent design, family, country, business, self. That's the only order. And after 65 years and meeting thousands of people and interviewing 3 millionaires an hour for 5 days a week for 2 years solid on my talk show, I'm telling you, those 5 priorities in that order is the only way it works. Intelligent design, family, country, business, self. Notice self is 5th, not 1st. When those 5 things and those priorities are in order, things almost work like magic, because our life is in priority and happy. And I always share with myself what I think I'd like to share with your listeners as something that because we have thousands of conversations with ourselves every day. And one of the things we teach is how to relabel these things, how to relabel. Don't use the word failure, use temporary defeat, because failure is too eternal, right? Temporary defeat is just that, it's temporary defeat, right? So as a part of the relabeling, I would recommend that your listeners say 3 things to themselves. I will never give up. I will keep rising up, and I will always overcome.
If you haven't caught on by now, hope is really important to us. Our podcast is called Sprinkle with Hope. And so the first question of the Double Down Dose is, how would you define hope?
Hope is believing that anything is possible. Yeah, for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Beautiful.
very simply put. It's interesting that we ask these 2 questions and get a myriad of responses. So it's cool to see different people's insight and just
That's my instant response. I
Yeah,
probably
I
could
love
give you
it.
a more
Beautiful.
complex.
No, it's
But that
great.
was my instant response. And I really, to me, believe that with love and hope, anything then becomes surmountable, doesn't it? It's becomes possible when we have those 2 things. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's typically the second part of the question is, what is your definition of love, or how would you define love?
It's who we are.
So the first part of the Double Down Dose is this: how would you define hope?
Oh, it's for me, it's just the hope for a better tomorrow, and it's a hope for good things to come, and
I really think that hope is a way of looking at life. Like if you look through the lens of hope, I just feel like that's such a good way to live, such a happy way to live. And as we all need a little more of that, especially this past year. So I think, one of our biggest goals and messages have just been trying to share hope and help people, look through that lens in their own life.
Yeah. And hope isn't the absence of struggle, right? Like hope is peace and contentment in the midst of struggle, because that struggle is life.
Yeah.
Right. But being content and having peace in the midst of hard things and challenges is how we see hope. And that's what the past year has been about for so many people.
Yeah.
It's just been a lot of struggle with fear and anxiety and uncertainty and loneliness. And we hope that our music can bring some peace to people who are really battling some of those emotions over this past year in particular.
Yeah, I love both of your responses to hope, and we love asking that question because it's kind of our mantra that we're, Shane and I are trying to spread as much hope throughout the world as possible. So I appreciate your answers to that. And so the second part of the Double Down Dose is, what is your definition of love, or how would you define love?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's hard to really describe that. But how would you describe that?
I mean, when I think of love, like real love, it's not something that can be earned. And it's not, to me, like if I love my children, I love my wife, and that's not something that like they can do something to earn that. It's just there. Like I just love them. And likewise, there's nothing they can do that would cause me to pull my love away. It like transcends that pettiness. In my mind.
Well, I think it's like the most powerful thing that anybody could do is just like learn to love another person and to be loved in return. That is like, for me, that's the whole meaning of life, is just like, to love and to be loved.
To be loved.
Yeah.
What is your definition of hope?
Mm, I guess that just anything is possible. It's, without hope, we would have had nothing. And that's kind of the driving force of what motivates us with anything, really. Without hope, what do we have? I guess that's not really a good definition, but I would say hope is probably, the one thing that keeps us striving for whatever it is that we need or want.
Really cool.
Love it.
Yeah, we love asking these two questions. So the second part of Double Down Dose, which often I don't think we think on a deeper level, is how would you define love?
Ah, oh gosh, that's a hard one. There's no better feeling than love, to be loved and to love somebody else. I don't know how I would sum that up, but it's like you're constantly filled with a warm hug, when you're loved, and it's you feel so secure and you feel safe. I think that's probably and I'm very fortunate that, I have a husband that, loves me unconditionally, and I'm kind of crazy. But without him, I couldn't be me. And, I don't know. It's just, it encompasses everything. And it, because I'm loved and, I had a great childhood. I was loved by my parents. So that was the foundation that helped me love my children and give my children everything they have. But yeah, that's a tough one. Now I'm going to be laying in bed tonight thinking, this is what I should have said.
Yeah. We
Thanks,
have had
guys.
that same exact.
I'm going to send you an email. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we just dub this in?
Yeah. Sounds great. How would you describe hope?
Hope is, to me, is having that faith that things will get better, that everything's going to be okay, that there's a chance. Hope to me is 1%. It's all you need is that 1% to get you to the next level, to get you through that one day of pain, to whatever you're struggling with. Is that hope carries you through. And I think that to me, I was given that hope by the grace of God. I really prayed. I'd kind of lost my connection with my higher power, whatever you call that. I call that my higher power, God. And when I started praying, I really got that connection back. And I feel like that gave me hope. To believe in something bigger than me gave me hope.
Love that.
Love that. Absolutely. Yeah, that rings in my ears as well. And so I appreciate you sharing that. So my question for you, Amberly, that we kind of like to end on is, what is your definition of love, or how would you define love?
Love is the most powerful thing, I think, in the world. I think that love to me, love is like the human spirit that won't give up. Love, when I think of love, and maybe this is just because I've been watching this Spartacus on TV and these warriors who travel the country because of love, but really that's what it is. For me, love was, my husband came to every single surgery, was there every single day. He showed up for me at the hospital. That was true love. He could have so easily just said, you know what, this is all too much, I'm out of here. Love carries you through the hardest times, and it connects you and bonds you when you're going through those really challenges in your relationship or with yourself. For me, love is from within. It was when I had to learn to love myself again, because I hated myself, and hate's a 4-letter word in our family. And I really had to learn to love myself in order to get that light back inside me and really get that flame burning again. And that was hard, but I was willing, and I tried every bit a little bit more, or every day a little bit more and a little bit more. And I think that it is possible to love again when you've been hurt or disappointed. And so anyway, those are the first things that come to my mind when you ask, what is love?
So Meg, Jason and I have come up with what we call the double down dose. Ready for this? It's not scary.
Yeah, it's not scary.
It's 2 questions. We really like to ask these questions. So the first question is, how would you define hope?
Do I get to hear both questions and then respond, or do I respond to this one first?
Yeah, you respond to this one first.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just want to make sure I understand the rules of the double down dose. Don't want to fail on the double down. How would I define hope? I would define hope as an expectation of the miraculous. But in order to, for me to get to this point where I do have hope, I went to Miss Wheelchair America after I was paralyzed, and I represented Utah in 2006. And the judges there asked me, how do you feel about hope? And at that time in my life, I was paralyzed the year earlier. I'd been paralyzed for 16 months. And I remember, because that's how my speech started, I've been paralyzed 16 months and 16 days. So, but they asked me, they said, how do you feel about hope? And out of self-preservation and a willingness to survive emotionally, I had given up on hope. I told them, I said, hope is like wishing, and hope is synonymous with the word wish, and you should do neither. You should deal with what the reality is, and you should be happy about what your reality is. And they thought, oh, that is very wise. That is very wise wisdom from this newly paralyzed girl. And, they thought that was pretty neat. And so did I. I thought I was pretty outstanding for coming up with that really rational, pragmatic approach to life. Out of a true self-preservation, I need to manage my own emotions through this trial, and I will not wish for things to get better. I will not wish, and I will not hope for things to change, because that will only rock this nice and tight boat that I have built. And I do not want to fall out of this boat into the emotional waters. But as I've grown spiritually, and as I've strengthened my own testimony of Jesus Christ and the plan of salvation, I have discovered that hope is not wishing. Hope is an expectation of reality that's in the future. And just because the future can change for the better doesn't mean our current reality needs to be depressing. Just because the plan of salvation is real and the resurrection is true, and I'm going to walk there and dance because there's clubs in heaven and I'm going to have them. Just because I know that that's real doesn't mean I can't enjoy being paralyzed. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy figuring out how to put an elastic in my daughter's hair with paralyzed fingers. I can enjoy that because I have hope that I will walk again, and I will have the option to flip somebody off, even though I will never choose that option.
Right.
But just having it is hopeful.
Yeah.
And choosing, and maybe that's unrighteous to say, like, we should never do that. But, does it matter if you don't sin, if you don't have the option to? Right. No, it matters if you don't sin, if you had the choice and chose not to. Yeah. So I don't know. That is my definition of hope. It's the expectation of the miraculous that I expect. I do have hope in Jesus Christ. He will heal me. He can heal me. And he will for sure in the resurrection. If he does before, that'd be awesome. But I don't worship Jesus Christ because he can heal me. I believe that the medical doctors will someday figure that out. I worship Jesus Christ because he's the only one who can come into my dark space and turn on a light and still leave the room dark. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The light of Christ can burn brightly in some place that the world would describe as dark.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. I love that the definition. I thought it was amazing. And so the second part of the double down dose, or the second question, is how would you define love, or what would you say about love?
How would you define love? Oh, that's a good question. See, the double down. I thought I was all right. I'm like, oh, these are easy.
Got free, but this one's tough, isn't it?
The love one's a little bit more tough for me. I come from a broken home. Like my parents got divorced. And when I say I come from a broken home, I just basically mean my parents got divorced, because I grew up with my parents married.
Yeah.
But then when I was an adult, my parents divorced, and it was so it just ripped apart my foundation. It was so stripping as far as family identity goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I really struggled for a long time. And so my family struggles with love just from person to person. And so I'm a big believer that you can fake it till you make it. I know that that's not maybe a popular way to go about things. But when I would have experiences where I'd have to be with different members of my family during this really rough time when my parents were actually splitting up and things were happening, and it was really caustic, and I would have to spend time with my one parent or the other parent, and sometimes I'd have to spend time with both parents and or some other family members and stuff. And I would hide in the bathroom before I would have to go out and be with everyone. And I would hide and I would pray, and I'd say, Heavenly Father, I don't have love right now, but I know you do. And I can pretend that I do, and I can do everything right. I can act like I do. I can say the right things. I can hug the right people. I can act like I do. But will you give me some of that love that you have? And talking about charity and things like that. And then I would go out and I would say the right things and I would do the right things. And I was blessed miraculously with a very special love for my family members individually. And now it's been a handful of years later. And I have love still for every single member of my family, even though I know that they struggle with that for each other, but I don't struggle with that for any of them. And so when you ask me to define love, I would just have to say that love is synonymous with Jesus Christ. And when you have Jesus Christ on your side, he will help you to feel what he feels anyway for us.
We really focus on hope, and that's a very important thing to us. So I want to ask you, how would you define hope?
I would define hope as having kind of just looking forward to the future in a positive way rather than being scared about the future. I feel like everyone should have a little bit of hope about certain things that, are going to happen, like hope to get married someday or hope to do well in college and things like that. Just kind of looking forward to the future rather than being scared for the future.
I love that. I think that is seriously spot on. And it kind of, before I asked my question, it kind of reminded me of this thing that I heard the other day where it said, your fears pretend to keep you safe. And that's kind of what it was reminding me of is that being scared or nervous about the future or whatever, and our fears or being afraid of the future is that same way. They pretend to keep us safe. So That was awesome. Spot on. So the second part of it, of the double down dose, is going to be just a little bit tougher. So going back to hope, we created this acronym out from HOPE, HOPE, heart, overcome, passion, and enough. And so my question to you is, what do you think when I say worth or self-worth or being enough, what does that mean to you?
I feel like we should all have a little bit of confidence within us, and yeah, just know that you are enough no matter what you look like or no matter who you are. Just having that knowledge of just having that worth within you and that self-worth. I would always have like little I am statements hung up on my mirror. So like, I am beautiful, I am brave, things like that. And I feel like that really helped me. Just seeing those things every single day helped me feel a little bit more confident and, get ready for my day and have self-worth kind of. And yeah, I feel like everyone should have that within them.
With these kind of personalities in mind, how would you define hope?
Hope. I think, to me, I love hope. Hope is this notion that we look forward and see a positive future where we can create the life that we want to create and the life we want to live in. And as I think about personality, it's a place where people build strong relationships and they nurture them because they treat others how they want to be treated, not treat others how we ourselves want to be treated.
Love it. Love it. So the second part of Double Down Dose today, we created this HOPE acronym, HOPE, heart, overcome, passion, and enough. Again, we felt like hope is important to us. Sprinkled with Hope is our podcast name. But I want to go back to the original, which is, how would you define love?
Wow, that's a great question. It's like trust. It's like you know it when you see it.
Yep.
I think it's when you see the inner light of the person for who they are, and you connect with that person's true self. And we don't try to change them to try to make them someone else. It's that we see them for who we are. We are just connected to it. And we just want to be with that because we feel that energetic connection to the people around us.